Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to patch and route on the X32 Behringer Producer. My setup here is pretty simple. I've got a microphone and some music going into the stage box on inputs 1 and 2 respectively. And I have two speakers, one on the bottom here and one on the top. The one on the top is sort of my mains, that's going to come out of 7 here. And the one on the bottom I chose to come out of output 1 on the stage box. The stage box is connected with a shielded Ethercon cable. If you use output A, you need to use input A on the stage box, and if you use B, you've got to use B on the stage box. It has to be the same letter. The first thing I need to do is make sure I'm getting signal from these inputs on the stage box to the board. To do that, you go to Routing, tab over to the input block. It should say Block Input. These numbers here, 1 through 8, 9 through 16, etc., those are your channels on the board. So when you select something from this column here, you're telling the board to pull from this source for those channels. It defaults to local 1 through 8, which is the physical analog inputs on the back of the board here. But since we're using the stage box, we need to change that down to AES 50A 1 through 8. If you were using the B connection, you would select B. Now you can see if I select that, immediately I have input signal from the music on channel 2. I don't have signal from the microphone yet because I need to turn on phantom power. To do that, I'll select it and hit 48 volts here. You'll also see the phantom power signal turn on the stage box. After you patch them, they're linked. So once I turn up the gain a little on the mic, you will see I've now got input signal from the mic and the music. The next step is to make sure that these inputs are going to the master fader. That one's easy. It happens by default. It's just this little button here that says main LR bus. So you would select the track and just make sure that main LR bus was lit up. So that's an easy one. The next thing you have to do is make sure that the master output is going to the right output on the stage box. Since I'm using number 7, I want this master fader to be patched to number 7. This is the way that it's patched by default, so that's another easy one, but let me show you how. You go to the same routing menu and you scroll over to Patch. Don't be confused with these AESA outputs yet. The first thing we need to do is actually look at the patching. This is where you tell it which output is what signal. For example, these outputs here, you can see as I scroll through them, output 1 is mix bus 1, output 2 is 2, 3 is 3, and so on. And you can see that 7 and 8 are main L and main R. And remember, these outputs here, these are not physical outputs. These are sort of virtual outputs. It is just what you're calling that signal so that you can communicate with the board. And this is a layer of complexity that usually trips people up, and it took me a while to figure that out too. So just remember, in this patching menu, these outputs are not physical outputs. It is a virtual output that you are assigning a signal to. So again, by default, outputs 7 and 8 are mix bus left and right. Now we can tab over to the AESA outputs. This is where you tell the stage box what virtual output it should push out of its XLR. So you can see outputs 1 through 8 is selected for physical outputs 1 through 8. That is why when I turn up this master and I turn up the music, you'll hear it. And I didn't have to do anything because by default, output 7 is patched. Let's say I wanted to use output 5 instead. I'll move the XLR to output 5. Now, nothing's going to happen when I turn up the music, because output 5 by default is patched to mix output 5. So we need to go to the patching section here, select virtual output 5, if you will, and instead of mix bus 5, we need to select a main. Now we should get signal.
Treating schizophrenia
There we go.
without a daily pill may seem impossible. But what if there was a path to treatment?
So that's a really quick way to just split the same signal to a lot of speakers. Let's say you have 8 main speakers and you don't care to have separate control over them, you just want to use it like a splitter. This is how you would do it. You would scroll through these virtual outputs and basically select the mains for as many as you wanted to. So right now I've got it on output 5 and on output 7. So I'm going to turn it back to mix bus 5. Go back to more of a default state. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to use the mix buses so that you can have separate signals going to 2 different speakers. So for example, this is going to be my mains, and this is going to be a secondary, maybe a monitor speaker, or it could be a recording or a Zoom meeting or anything like that. By default, if you hit bus 1 through 8, these are your masters for your buses, or you could call them auxes or mixes, some boards call them. This is where they show up. And you can see up here, bus 1, bus 2, bus 3. So the first thing I want to do is send a signal to bus 1. To do that, you would hold this button that says Sends on Fader until it stops blinking. Now, the faders turn into contributions to that bus. And the bus that you have selected is the bus to which the signal will be routed. So for example, I'll select bus 1, and these are my sends now to bus 1. I'm going to go ahead and send the music to bus 1, and I'm going to turn up the master for bus 1. And now we have our music coming out of output 1, which you remember from the patching section is patched to mix bus 1. And you'll see if I change it, where we lose the signal because we've undone the patching. So you need to make sure you're checking the patching section if you're not getting signal. For example, let's say I wanted mix bus 3. I'll move this to output 3. And output 3 by default, mix bus 3, all I've got to do is send it to mix 3 instead. Turn up mix 3, send to mix 3. Pretty easy. I'm going to turn off the Sends on Fader feature here and go back to the regular fader layout to show you one more important thing. You will notice if I turn up the master for mix bus 3, I go to Sends on Fader, and I contribute signal to that, I'm getting sound, even though the fader on the channel is down. That means it's sending pre-fader, which could be good, it could be very bad. So I need to show you how to change that. What I would do is select the channel, you go to bus send here, hit view, you can see we're sending to bus 1 and bus 3. All you've got to do to change the tap point is scroll with these encoders. So bus 3, pre-fader, post-fader, and we've lost signal, and that's a good thing because the fader is down on the channel. So pre-fader, sending before the fader, post-fader, sending after the fader. And this is generally what you want for recordings and for most setups, in my opinion. You don't want to be sending signal when your fader is down. So my bus 3 is up, my contribution is up, but I'm not getting signal because the fader on the input is down. I need to bring this up. Now I'm getting signal. So that's post and pre-fader. That's very important. Another thing I'll show you quickly is the mono bus. In addition to the mix buses, there is a fairly quick way to get another output just with the push of a button, although there is some patching that needs to be done. Let's say I want to send my music to the mono bus. Perhaps it's a sub and you don't want to send the mics to the sub because there's no low frequency content, but you want to send the music. So I would select the music, I would select mono bus. Now it's sending to the mono bus. This here is the level, the send level to the mono bus. And if you hit view, you can see I'm sending to the mono bus. Now there's a couple more steps. I need to tell the board what output that mono bus will come out of on the stage box. So I've got to go to routing again. And since we're already using output 3, I'm going to use that one. I'm going to say instead of mix bus 3 for output 3, I'm going to use main M/C. That is what the mono bus is called in the patching section. Main MC. And then there's one last step. You need to actually turn up the master fader for that mono bus, which is found in the matrix section. You have to hit matrix, and it's this last one here. You see we have signal on it, and if you select it, you'll see MC. So now I should get signal out of output 3 to this small speaker. There it is. So that was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. I think that should get even a novice pretty far on this setup. I didn't go over any of the effects or the channel strip because that essentially works the same way as an analog board. I didn't go over any of the advanced features. There's a USB input if you want to play music from your computer or do a mix on your computer. You would patch it the same way, except you would just go to card, and that's where the USB stuff shows up. So that's sort of something for another video. Thank you for watching.